For us right now, though, let's pay attention to what's going on in Ukraine and other military matters with Hamish de Bretton-Gordon, OBE. He's a former British Army colonel and an expert on chemical weapons. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you so much indeed for joining us. I want to ask you, just first up, about these revelations overnight, these yet more missile strikes and drone attacks by the Russians on Kyiv, the Ukrainian capital. 3 deaths, 2 of them children, 1 a 9-year-old girl. There's no doubt at all that Russia is taking revenge for these apparent drone attacks on Moscow, on civilian areas. But again, the death of a 9-year-old girl is definitely going to tug on a lot of heartstrings, isn't it?
Well, absolutely, Julia. I think the Moscow drone strikes on Monday really have rattled the Kremlin, and Medvedev threatening James Cleverly, the Foreign Secretary, that he was now a target. I think it's incongruous that the Russians are getting so strident about it when they have attacked Kiev 18 times out of the last 19 days. And as you said, overnight last night, 2 children under 12 were killed. And one drone attack on Moscow has got them ruffled. I think the key thing is it's probably all part of the shaping for this much vaunted spring offensive, because the Russians only managed to shoot down about 50% of these drones. And I expect now with the oligarchs, because it was the the Mayfair of Moscow that was attached, where all the elite live, who are pretty much unaffected by the war. They are now pretty strident against it. And
they're now sitting up, paying attention because it's affecting them. Yeah, it's not their sons who are being conscripted to war, is it? I mean, there's no doubt at all we're all waiting for that counter-offensive. No longer a spring one. I think it'd be a summer one at this rate. But it's also in relation to that Moscow drone attack. We don't know yet whether it was the Ukrainians or not, but we had James Cleverly, the Foreign Secretary, speaking yesterday, saying, look, Ukraine had a right to defend themselves as they saw fit from that attack and to diminish Moscow's ability to attack them. In response to that, the former Russian Prime Minister, very close ally of Vladimir Putin, Dmitry Medvedev, he has said that makes the UK a legitimate target after the UK, he says, have started an undeclared war against Russia, that we are now a target. That's a concern, isn't it?
Well, I think it's the usual hot air coming out of that man. He's Putin's attack dog, spurts out his propaganda, and they're rattled because it now means that Putin's got to move air defence assets from the Ukraine to Moscow. And I think Ukrainians are really canny. They are what we call shaping the battlefield, making sure that when they do attack, and they'll attack when they're ready at a time and a place that we don't know. But if half the air defence assets are moved from Ukraine to Moscow, and we know that the Russian army is pretty much defeated, then the Ukraine hopefully will prevail much more quickly. So I'm not worried what Medvedev is saying. It's usual hot air, and it's the way that Russians do business. We know that politicians who oppose the Kremlin either fall off balconies or drink some Novichok or polonium. And that's the way Russians do things. They don't understand how a democratic world leads. And of course, they invaded Ukraine. They're the aggressors. And we need to get them out so that we can get peace in Europe.
Absolutely. Can I ask you about this row of RAF diversity targets and this, really quite extraordinary revelation of an email from a senior recruiter saying, look, stop choosing useless white male pilots. We need more women. We need more ethnic minority candidates. And basically, if there's a board, one of the selection meetings where you're going to be helping to choose these candidates, if there aren't any women or ethnic minority candidates, they just cancel those meetings. This is now in black and white. The story has been around for quite a few months. Look, we all want to make sure that no one is prevented from their chosen career, and we don't get the brightest and the best and the most talented joining the RAF and any other job at all, but particularly in the military, we need to have the brightest and best. But, if there's anything stopping people, if they're women or if they're ethnic minorities from joining, then that should absolutely be tackled. But should there be this, diversity target where basically you're saying, no more white men. We just need anyone else will take, but not useless white men. What's your reaction to that as a useless white man?
Well, as a useless white man, the military should reflect the society that it protects. And absolutely, we should have, a cross-section. But fighting is a challenging game, and we need the best people in those positions. I see there is absolutely no reason why 50% of the RAF pilots should not be females.
I do. I'm
Diversity.
sorry, I don't understand this. It is very unlikely that 50% of that you could actually have that many women who want to do the job. I think when people pretend that actually men and women, on average, not all, on average, do actually often want different sorts of work. I find it quite bizarre. Why do more women work in primary healthcare, primary care, in healthcare, in childcare, and more men go and work in the army and the military? Maybe there are actually some gender differences that we should stop pretending don't exist.
Oh, no, absolutely. I think anybody who wants to be a pilot should be able to do it, whatever their
but it's unlikely. I think it'd be very unlikely it would end up being 50-50 in many careers.
Well, maybe. I mean, I could never aspire to be a pilot. I don't have the skills or the intelligence, being a simple tank commander. And I'm very proud the Royal Tank Regiment has the first female tank commanders. And there's absolutely no reason, if a female would want to be a tank commander, that she shouldn't. And perhaps in the past, there have been bars to that. So I am very keen to get the best people in those positions.
Whoever they are. I mean, that's the key. But we can't be writing off white men just because they're white men. That's as bad as writing off someone just because they say a black woman. That is just as bad, in my view. Hamish, I want to ask you about a story, and you may not have seen this, and I understand, but Ben Robert Smith, who's Australia's most decorated living soldier, he has just lost a historic defamation case against 3 newspapers in Australia. They'd accused him of war crimes in Afghanistan. They claim it was a civil trial. It's the first time a court has assessed accusations of war crimes by Australian forces in Afghanistan. A judge said that 4 of the 6 murder allegations, all denied by the soldier, were substantially true, and that he therefore lost his defamation case. There's some talk that this could have implications for cases brought in this country. What do you make of that?
Well, not really my area of expertise. What I would say is this fellow does hold the Victoria Cross, the highest award for bravery, and no doubt has done some very brave things on the battlefield and saved lives of his comrades. And it's, I think, for people who haven't been under fire, haven't fought against a determined enemy like the Taliban or Al-Qaeda, it's very difficult to understand these things. However, we must keep the moral high ground in this, and we've seen all the dreadful war crimes that have happened in Ukraine at the moment. I think these things are unproven. He's a very brave man, but if crimes are being committed on the battlefield, then there is no reason why they should not go to court. As far as I understand, this fellow has not been convicted of any of these things. It's desperately sad, but the bottom line is, one must maintain, however difficult it is on the battlefield, one must maintain the rules of war and follow them. And I think we all try and make sure that things are absolutely as they should be on the battlefield, but it is a really tricky environment, and it's a sad day, I think, and let's hope that we move on, and if there are any crimes that need to be investigated, they're done by the appropriate authority.
OK, I really appreciate you joining us, talking about all of those subjects. Hamish de Bretton-Gordon, former British Army colonel, and not just a lowly tank commander, absolute hero to us.